Hello, everyone. My name is Darcy Norman, and you're listening to another episode of Oak Performance Radio. I hope you enjoy the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Oak Performance Radio. I'm your host, Adam Lane. If you're new to the show, our goal here is to create some content, some fantastic content for athletes, parents, and coaches. We tell stories, have laughs, and go into everything that is the end game of athletic performance, helping athletes achieve their optimal performance and be the best they can possibly be. Enjoy the show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Oak Performance Radio. I'm your host, Adam Lane. With me today, Coach Darcy Norman of USA Soccer. Coach, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, appreciate it. Look forward to the chat today.
Look at this. You're so busy. You're taking this call in a hotel room. And that's how busy of a guy you are. You're traveling the world. You just got back from, what country were we just in?
Mexico. We were in Guadalajara playing Mexico. Unfortunately, lost 2-0. So it was a tough way to end a camp. But back out and just flew out to Hartford, Connecticut, hanging out in Springfield, Mass, where my son plays lacrosse out here. So just popping in, seeing him for the weekend, and then we'll get back to regular programming, regular life programming.
There we go. So basically, you just drive around and watch people play sport. That's really what people need to know right there.
Yeah, I wish it was all that, but with occasional computer time.
There we go. Mix it in. Create some balance.
Exactly.
Coach, for the tens of people that listen to the show who might not know who you are and why you're such a big deal, tell them who you are and why you're such a big deal.
I don't know, if the big deal part is worth anything, but by trade and training, an athletic trainer, strength coach, physical therapist, had a PT practice when I got done with, between kind of the strength and conditioning and athletic training and PT school, had a performance company with another friend, Kirk Bradshaw, where we ran speed and development camps for kids. So I did that for a few years. Also helped clubs, generate revenue through personal training and functional training. Then ended up going back to PT school because we also had a lot of folks that had injuries and problems and trying to kind of reintegrate them back into their, life and activities of what they wanted to do. And then PT practice in Seattle for a couple of years before joining what was formerly known as Athletes Performance, now Exos. And that was kind of the kickoff to really digging into elite sports performance training. And so was there early 2000s. Then, my wife and I wanted to get back to the mountains, so settled in Lake Tahoe, California, where I started some consulting and working in elite cycling. So it was with Team High Road. It was T-Mobile and then Team High Road over 4 or 5 years with them, and then got into elite soccer starting at Bayern Munich, and then was with the German national team for the Euros of 2012, World Cup 2014, 2018, which didn't go as well as 14, and where we won, and then was also head of performance at AS Roma for 3 years, so lived in the great city of Rome, and then ended up after the 2018 World Cup moving back to the States and started with a company called Kitman Labs, which is a data analytics platform for sports, and also joined up with the U.S. men's national team as a performance coach. And then after the World Cup of 22, took on their head of performance role. So, and that's where I currently sit today.
So you're not that busy. Just a couple emails today, and a podcast. I mean, geez, can't afford. There you go. How? So, Coach, what I would love for people to get out of this show, again, most of it, local athletes and parents that. I mean, like myself, I want my kids to enjoy sport as much as humanly possible, to enjoy their teammates, enjoy their coaches, enjoy the experience, learn, get smarter, take on challenges, win, lose, all the things until they can't anymore, until they do, or don't want to, which is absolutely fine. I think it's hard to know, because as a parent, you want the best for your kid. You want to support them along the way. And then some parents think it's doing a club sport 13 months a year and traveling to, Europe to play soccer and then back to here and then doing this and having your life completely revolve and giving your kids up because you want to, because you love them and do the best. Some people are more chill with it. Obviously there's a middle ground of something here that's smart and intelligent. You work with the highest of the high level. I'm curious to know what you see at your level of these guys that you work with and you train in the way of, and I don't know if you know their backgrounds or how they grew up or things. It's just interesting to me how people get from, my oldest is 12 right now, how you get from 12 to 24 and on the, USA men's soccer team.
Yeah. And, just probably I have two kids. As I mentioned, I'm here in Springfield watching my son play, who's 22. And then we also have a daughter who's 19, who's on the U.S. Snowboard team. And so second year, but, this year she's really kind of doing the world tour and hitting all the World Cups.
These kids just have good genetics, man. Look at that.
Yeah, and a lot of luck, probably, and more from the mom's side. And I would say I've kind of always said this is you got to love it. And that's the first and foremost is the kids have to love it because there's so many hurdles and obstacles along the way that the love is gonna help them overcome those in those tough moments. And if they don't love it, which is fine, right? Like, it's probably going to come to an end at some point because the commitment that you have to make to get to that level is huge. And like anything, the only way you're going to continue that commitment and all the hurdles you're going to face, which is injuries, difficult people, difficult circumstances, difficult weather, travel, loneliness. Like I remember one trip, it was my daughter's first opportunity to go with the U.S. team to a World Cup event. And she was training on a glacier in Austria and she had to train it. She was 15 at the time, 16 maybe. She had to get on a train to Switzerland and meet up with the U.S. national team, right? And all these names that she's looked up to. And, she had to get on the train herself. She had to go, and figure it out. And, then she's walking around this little village that's super quiet, waiting for, this big U.S. national team to arrive. And she's like, had this moment of like, what the hell am I doing here? Like, I am by myself in a Swiss town where the only thing open on a Sunday is this coffee shop where I can get a little internet. And, like she had a moment of like, am I cut up for this? And, and so we obviously as parents had a conversation with her and just be like, this is what you've been shooting for. Like, this is your opportunity. And, there's the sexy side of it, of the, the wins and the accolades and all those kind of bits. And then there's the majority of the time where it's like, it's just you have to decide if I want to go to the gym today to train because everybody else wants to go to the lake or go to the party or go wherever. And you got to go this way if you want to get to your goals. And it can be a lonely place because a lot of people don't realize the energy and effort that it truly does take. And for that reason, you got to love it because you got to know that, yes, this way is the right path, not that way. If I want to get, what I want out of my sport. And so, yeah, it really comes down to you got to love it. You got to love getting up every day and doing the things that a lot of people don't want to do to be successful, because there's and two, as you go up the pyramid, right? Like that level gets more competitive and the little bits make the difference. And again, it's just, that there's some other kid or kids or people somewhere else that have that love and passion, and and it gets there. And, there's a little luck along the way, whether it's injuries, whether it's finding the right coach that hits the right triggers for you, to keep you motivated, to find that passion, to help get those steps to make you feel like you're really on a path to getting there. There's just so many little things that got to go well to get there. And then, and then there's the internal side of the person that's on that journey. And if they want to, jump over all those hurdles that get thrown in your path.
I just had a conversation with a buddy of mine. His daughter's an 8th grader, very good softball player. However, it's really kind of the only sport she does. And has found a very, very competitive team in which to play with, loves the team, loves the teammates, does the sleepovers and the overnights and the hotel stays and stuff like that. Some really, really good friends. She's struggling with friends at school because she sees these, even though she sees them in school, she doesn't really see them out of school. Often she's traveling, not home on the weekends, can't hang out with these kids. And so she's struggling with friends at school, has friends outside of it. But I think it's a hard balance, especially as a parent, to try to figure out, like, do we push forward with this? Do we need to back off a little bit? Very talented, loves it. When she's there, enjoys it. But then there's the other side too, where there are times where I don't know. Do you have any thoughts with, like, I guess I'm curious with your daughter, like, did you have constant conversation with, like, is this really what you want? Or?
Yeah, I mean, it's a constant trade-off, and you got to have those conversations. And, we've had a lot of them. My wife is really good at having them with our daughter. And it is, I think with any relationship, you got to put effort into it, right? Like, relationships are made from memories. And if you don't take the time to make memories, it's hard to, facilitate those relationships. And so one of the things that we talk to our daughter about is that you got to make an effort. And if you don't make an effort, nobody's going to make an effort for you. So you got to take the first step. And so that was a big piece. We come from they grew up in a small town. And so in a small town, you tend to have these you don't have a diverse group of people. And I think anybody that's listening to this that comes from a small town, they probably had to get to college to find their people, right? Like, where it was a broader group of people that really had the same ways of looking at things, similar values, same interests, to where it's like, okay, I found my people, and now they start to flourish. And, and it also comes with maturity, because I would say, we moved around a lot. Like, we lived in Germany, we lived in Italy. So we made it hard on our kids to get consistent friend groups as well. But that was the thing. When we came home, we're like, hey, you got to make an effort. Like, you got to take the first step. You can't expect people, they don't know you. So you don't, they're not going to necessarily take that step. So if you want that relationship, you gotta start it, and then you gotta nurture it. And so you gotta reach out to people. You gotta stay in touch with people. You gotta, consistently make that effort. And she travels a lot. So now she's got her kind of competitive group, to your example earlier, right, with the softball gal. And now, just from her working in the off season at a local coffee shop, she kind of found her other friend group. So now, she's got her 2 groups of people, where it's like my competitive group and my non-competitive group. And, she seems to be in a really happy place, for the time being. And it's a constant, any parent knows it's a constant ups and downs and ebb and flows. Like, there's nothing better when your kids are stoked on what they're doing and they're happy what they're doing. And there's nothing worse when you pick up the phone and you chat with them and you can just hear the disappointment in their voice of their current state of being. So it's, and that's just the cycle of life as well. And I think you just got to kind of stick to it and have open, honest conversations around it, and also, take the realities of it head on and accept them, and just work through them.
What I'm curious, either within your own kids or within the guys that you coach, soccer I always think is a unique sport, in the sense of, I mean, really you can play it year round, anywhere. It gets cold here, so we go indoor. It's different. And then it takes up a lot of space, and Reed had some soccer practice during the winter last year, and it was always super late at night, and just whatever, not ideal gym time and stuff like that. With and maybe speak to the soccer, I think first, just because it is that sport, and you see a lot of sports where you can, because I didn't realize, to go back to the softball thing, softball can be played 12 months a year here. Like, obviously outdoor, but then like we have like these indoor facilities where you can play softball. Baseball, you can't so much because the ball travels so much farther and stuff like that. So the boys actually back off on their playing a little bit in the winter. They'll work on their skill set. They'll get in the cage and they'll throw and stuff like that, but not actually playing game after game after game after game. But the girls will, which I think is unique. Back to the soccer thing though. Sorry, I'm bring this back. What, I guess I'm curious, what, like, the guys that you coach at USA Soccer, are these guys that like started kicking the ball at 2 months old and they've never looked back, or did they bebop around soccer? Did they try other sports? Are they just natural athletes and they're the top 0.0001% and they're freaks of nature?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all the above. Everyone's got their own path to how they got there, and and it's all different. I think, in America, we see soccer as a lesser sport, right? Like, you got American football, baseball, basketball, hockey, and then, there's soccer. And, it's even, you see it with the women's game is higher, because, mainly because of the popularity and the success of the women's national program. The soccer is the world sport, right? Like, it's played everywhere around the world, and it is the sport everywhere around the world besides here. The reason for that is all you need is a ball, and you don't even need a lot of space, right? Like, I can play a 1v1, I can play a 1v0, just like basketball. That's why basketball is probably the second largest sport around the world, because you just need a ball and a hole to shoot it through. And that's essentially soccer. It's just, one's played with your feet and one's played with your hands. The goal is up there for basketball. The goal is down on the ground for soccer. But you can play it anywhere, and you can play it in your basement, probably contrary to what your parents want, but you can do it. And so, yeah, it can be played all year round. And I would say a lot of the guys that you come across, they played it at a younger level because a lot of the skill acquisition, you just absorb that stuff at an earlier age, where as you get older, it gets a little harder. And some are multi-sport athletes and they settled on soccer. And some, have played it from probably their first memories. They had a ball at their feet. And so it's just one of those things. It's really about the commitment to wanting to get better, and, and the passion, like we talked about, the love for it. And I think that's what got them to where they're at. And obviously their skill and their development, their athleticism, I think when you get to the more elite levels, then it becomes more tactical, right? A lot of the people have the skill, necessary, but then can you read the game? Can you read the tactical situation to apply the right answer to it? And so I think that's a difference, but it comes from all variations. There's not like, oh, everyone starts here and ends there. You can have some kids that love it and they're just focused on that ball. That's what they're committed to. And that's all they've done from 3 years old till their professional ranks. And then you have other kids that played other sports and they settled on soccer. And that's really what became their love and drive to keep going and try. So, and then it's also being in the right areas, right? Like, if you grew up, like I grew up in Canada, Northern Alberta, not a lot of soccer going on there, right? So it's hard to also find, we talked about these friend groups, because that can be a motivation early on in life before you kind of get to the specialization of it. Is it because it is a social thing and it is a friend group thing. that you all get together and have a good time, right? Doing soccer or whatever, insert sport, like for this gal, softball. And that's totally fine. And as long as they love it, they're having a good time doing it. That was my daughter's motivation at the beginning, because that was her friend group, was the people that she went out and snowboarded. And if she didn't have that, motivation would wane. And now, she's matured enough and found other folks that have similar thoughts and kind of life goals, that now, her friend group has evolved. And so, yeah, it's part of the journey, and there's no straight line from youth to pro.
I think it's Dan John. Are you familiar with Dan John? Strength conditioning coach.
Yeah. Contextually, yeah.
Him and he's written out different books. Him and Pavel and back. His line is genetics and geography, where if you are 6'5", 280 pounds in the U.S., you play football. But if you're 6'5", 280 pounds in Iceland, you do strongman. Like, so it's like, depends where you grew up. Like, And
there's a lot of soccer guys, like in Europe, where I've worked with a lot of soccer guys there, because the primary, the primary sport is soccer. I was like, man, if you would have grown up in the States, you would have been a tight end in football, or a Major League Baseball pitcher, or a point guard, just because they're so athletic. That, yeah, depending on what they had access to, they just would have been good at it. And, again, if the passion to do it was there. So, and I think that's also the other good thing about soccer, is you get all shapes and sizes, because it takes, 11 players on a field to get the ball in the net. And at the end of the day, that is the ultimate goal. And you don't necessarily have to be the strongest, the fastest. Like, you can have a various mix up of skills that, if you find the right team, it creates the right recipe balance to make the best meal and score goals. So you can get all shapes and sizes in soccer, which is great.
Coach, I think it's funny. You keep mentioning the passion piece, and you have to love it. And I could not agree more, because I feel like, not that I'm magical, but I feel like I have a magic 8-ball with kids, because the kids that train with us. So we train the entire VC United elite volleyball program. So like the top tier group. And some of those kids, they want it. They love it. They love being here. They love the travel. They love playing. They love it. They love everything. They like the working out. They like lifting weights. And then other kids pretend like they like all those things. They like playing, and they like the friends. It just kind of depends on where it is. But the kids that truly love it and really work hard for us, not just get in here and go through the motions, but get in here and really get after it. And all of a sudden they're deadlifting some pretty impressive weight, and they're squatting some pretty impressive weight. And you see them pushing sleds, and they're hammering. Like, again, not that I'm a magic man, but like at the age of 15, I'd be like, hey, Grace is going to go somewhere. Like, this girl wants it. And fast forward, 3-4 years, she's getting recruited to blankety blank, and be like, oh yeah, I could have told you that. Like, it wasn't a surprise. Cause it's funny that to truly, truly love it. And it's interesting, cause it's like, to actually love the sport is usually easy. It's not, sports are fun, friends are fun. But then all the hard work that go, to eating well, going to bed when you need to, lifting the weights, doing the training that you need to, practicing when you don't want to, getting out of bed when you don't want to. Like, those are all the hard things to do. And, man, if you do it, and because, you have to, because you like to, because you want to win, it's, you keep going. I don't know where I'm going with that. There's no question there.
No, I mean, it spurs some thoughts in my head, and totally kudos to you and the group, that you put together to work with the kids. Cause I can guarantee, and I know you probably won't say this, but I'm sure you've had parents come up to you and just be like, hey, Adam, I can't thank you enough for what you've done for my kid or kids or our group of kids. Because I think, there's just so many pressures, and to work hard is hard, right? And so to show that working hard can be enjoyable, and that can be fun, and that it can, all that is a life lesson that those kids are going to take with them if they frame it up appropriately. Because we all know that there's groups where working out isn't fun because you got some person screaming down your throat and it's not enough, you got to go harder, like kind of that old school scenario. And that only lasts so long, and it only is appropriate for some people. And I think positivity and motivation is for everybody. And when you can demonstrate that working hard and difficult things can be done with a smile on your face, maybe not in the moment that you're grunting through a tough spot in a bar move, but after the fact, and celebrating all those little wins, like, it's very cliche, but there's a ton of life lessons in that. And for you to bring those to life for these kids, those are some of the things I talked about, those making those hurdles easier to jump over rather than making them taller, right? Like you've lowered the barrier to even the kids that may not have the passion. They still, like, you're giving them life skills of like, hey, I can go to the gym and do this and have a good time. I might not want to do it at the level of this kid or this person or that person, but I can still, go do it. And they might get 3, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road and still think positively over that experience. And that's what keeps them, a healthy life for the rest of their lives, and yeah, like there's definitely coaches in my daughter's, history where my wife and I are just extremely thankful because, she was living away from us, and you're putting, a lot of their life in these coaches' hands. And so, yeah, it's good coaches, supportive coaches, motivating coaches, happy coaches are worth their weight in gold. And the more they have all those qualities, even more so. And it's not to say that everything is kumbaya and we're all going to sit here, and pretend that the hard times are not hard. But the fact that, you can have those honest conversations and difficult conversations, but they don't have to be, negative Nelly conversations. They can be like, let's learn from this. Let's get better from this. Let's move on from this. Always like, it's everything being an upgrade, not necessarily like that's wrong or this is right. Like, let's just try and do this a little different or a little better or whatever. So yeah, I think it's extremely valuable. So, I know even though my kids don't train with you, I can only imagine the service and that you're providing for that group because, it's not that you're a magic 8-ball. It's just you do stuff right and you get, the kids, you're going to have more kids than not be successful because of the approach that you take.
We really enjoy it. And I know we were talking about this before we hit record. Yeah, I don't know. There's not much more fun in this world than watching a kid get better. Like, I don't know, that I absolutely addicted to that. And it's funny. The biggest compliment we've gotten from parents and stuff. And it's funny because we use some, Hawkeye force plate technology, and we're able to. We have data on data on data. We used Sparta Science before that, like 6 years on data on these kids, and we're seeing where they started and we're seeing where they're finished and And you would think parents would come up and be like, "Oh, Adam, thank you for making Maddie more explosive. She's so much stronger, and her vertical is here, and now she's here, and now she's da 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 da." But it's not that. It's she has so much more confidence now. And it blows. I'm like, confidence? What? This is, we're not doing confidence seminars. Like we're training, lifting weights here. Come on, what are we doing? But like, it totally makes sense.
Yeah, but it's those numbers, right? Like if you look at the definition of confidence, it's about preparation, and then knowing that I'm prepared and having that data and that information that you're sharing with those kids and saying like, hey, look, you started here, you put in the work and effort, see your progress over time and where you got into, like that fills the cup of confidence, and I think those are the things. And then showing the kids what they can do, like your point earlier about the kids are moving some good weight. Like, yeah, they feel good that I can get up and pick up the bar, that they can do more weight than their mom or dad, that they can, that they're just like put together, ready to go. So any physical challenge is just, let's bring this. I can do this. And so it's very much, I think confidence ends up being the end result to all the work and effort that they put in, where that data, that information, those things just leads to that. So I would say it's an indirect thank you to the fact that their vertical jump and their power outputs and all that stuff. It just culminates in the confidence piece. But what they're, I think, saying is thank you for everything you do, because the ultimate piece is that they have confidence to go kick ass in the world.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and it continues to be fun. I know it's a good time. Coach, from in this Instagram world that we live in, where I don't know, my Instagram feed is riddled with coaches and strength coaches doing things, and now and again you have somebody who's doing a dumbbell walking lunge, and you're like, wow, look at the beauty in a dumbbell walking lunge. But most people are standing on Bosu balls, juggling kettlebells, like a seal, and trying to make the most insane, sexy things out there. And I definitely think people have gotten more creative with their strength training, which I don't think is bad. I think it's opened up, sports performance is more than just like squat, bench, deadlift. It's not powerlifting. It's not CrossFit. What I'm kind of curious, you don't have to, we could go hours here. What do your guys do? You're dealing with the top of the top soccer players. You're looking for them to be available, to be, to be healthy on the field. They have to play their sport at this high level.
Yeah. It's a great question, right? Like, there's two limiting factors to most things in life: time and money. And it usually boils down to those things, right? Like money to buy the equipment to do some of this stuff, and then the time it takes to get there, and the time it takes to practice these crazy moves and all that stuff. So, we do the stuff that gives us the best bang for the buck, given the situation. And it's funny because we have a new coaching staff that just came in, and they have, I would say their methodology is a little more towards the ecological systems and doing more movement variability stuff, which is fine. Where I would say we're coming more from a dynamic systems side. And, okay, you started with this move, then we add this move, and it's more in that kind of stuff, to where then you get to sports specificity, where the ecological systems starts at sports specificity and works backwards. And I think that's where you see, the Instagram, you could call it sports specificity, right? Or movement variability, but it's the end range of what's possible. So from that side, it's like, wow, the human abilities of what's possible is incredible. What it takes that one person out of however many million people that are in the world to get there is, it takes a lot, and, the genetics and training to make that happen. So I would say, and we've had this conversation because we've done a deeper dive into the ecological systems because of this coaching group. And then, it's all present, it's all relevant. So just where does it fit in the spectrum? And so, we were chatting, and this is kind of timely, and, kind of taking notes and thinking about it. And what a colleague and I, Steve Fell, were chatting about is really, if you had to start, it's about groove the move, right? Like, what's your movement? What's your base movements? Get really good at that. And you have this sinus curve, right? Like, of your eccentric and your concentric. So just, can you make that a clean pattern? And from all your force plate stuff that you see a lot of crazy jump patterns in your force plates, right? Like primary bimodal and secondary bimodal. And what you really see of the good ones is this nice, fairly clean unimodal thing where they're stacking their joints and contracting in the right sequence to really maximize their outputs. And so every movement has this curve. And then, so first it's groove the move, and then, using techniques like reactive neuromuscular training or constraints-based approaches to facilitate that. Then it's about applying force, right? Like, can you do it with more force and power? So you got to add some resistance or some load, and then you can use the whole cycle of that curve, whether it's eccentrics, isometrics, EQIs, VBT, whatever the qualities that you're shooting for. And then it's applying it to a direction, right? Like, is it an acceleration? Is it a deceleration? Is it a vertical jump? Is it a broad jump? Whatever the case is that sport is made of, you got to apply it to a direction or an amplitude. And then from there, it's applying it to the skill of the activity, and then adding variability, right? And then that's where you see, vibration, bungee perturbation, balance, physio ball stuff, right? Like, those are all things that add variability to the sinus curve to improve, or I shouldn't say necessarily improve, but just give the person more movement variability options, so that when they're in their chaotic environment, they hopefully have the right program to deal with the right circumstance to avoid injury and optimize performance. So I would say that's it on a basic level. So we're doing a lot of groove the moves. We're focused on a lot of base movements. We're adding variability when it's appropriate. A lot of it is force production, I would say, in soccer, because it's such a skill-driven sport and you got to play it with your feet. That's always been the emphasis, which I get it. It's totally fine. Where the performance opportunity is that, they don't spend a lot of time in the weight room, and not that it needs to be in the weight room, because you can be doing it anywhere really, but it's around the premise of being pound for pound as strong as possible, so that, in our sport, it's a very heavily metabolic sport, and everything you do has a metabolic consequence. And so if you're pound for pound as strong as possible, the energy expenditure to do the same thing will be less, right? And if it's less, now I've instantly got fitter. Besides the performance gain of the force application of getting there quicker. So my performance has gone up, my fitness has improved, because my fitness has improved, right? Like, to do the same amount of work, I have less fatigue. So now my recovery will be improved. And because I have the durability of all that within whatever the sport demands, my risk mitigation for injury goes down. So, pound for pound, you want to be as strong as possible, regardless of what you're playing. We could argue, in more contact-based sports like football and rugby, you need more mass, because it's a little more momentum-based, depending on the well, I shouldn't say a lot, depending on the position you play. And to me, it's really that simple. And then the discussion is more of, what direction are you coming from in that conversation? But you need a stick in the sand to have a meaningful conversation, to either say like, okay, we need to go more left, or we need to go more right, or north, south, or whatever, direction. Because I think, that famous quote is, if all you have is a hammer, everything is a nail. And you got to see that there's a bigger spectrum, and there's a lot of ways to get there. And so just, it's picking the right tool for the right purpose.
I love everything you said there. That absolutely fantastic. And you can tell you're a systems guy, you just very calculated with what you're doing here. I know we have parents that will come in not completely understanding what we're doing and how we do it and whatnot. And they've never done any type of strength in their training in their life, any type of strength and conditioning. So they just see random things on the Instagram, and there are volleyball parents and whatnot who will Google something, then all of a sudden their feed is inundated with like these different jump protocols and blah 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 blah, and they're having conversations. Adam, what size boxes should I get for so and so to jump on at home in the base? Why does she need to jump more? She's got 2.5 hours of practice 3 days a week here. She's playing 6 games on the weekend. what, so, oh, well, I saw this. Anyway, if you were to scroll it back to, because I find us having to very much teach the basics. Like if we need a basic squat, we need a basic hinge, push, pull, things that your guys have mastered and probably mastered a long time
I wouldn't
ago.
go that far. There's a lot of guys that are great soccer players that still need to work on the basics, like they're good at the skill of the sport, but they're maybe not good at fundamental patterns. And that's why they break down, right? Like it's kind of, to your probably getting a little ahead of your question. If your car, like if not all the lug bolts on your wheel or are fastened tightly, or your car is a little out of alignment, it's one thing if I'm driving around town getting some groceries, the likelihood of things breaking aren't as high. But if I got to do a road trip, right, like those little wears and tears add up over time. And, they're also in patterning that you're not, like you might be moving well enough for this level, but you're not going to move well enough to the next level, because the amount of load that I got to put on you to get to the next level needs a good base. And a lot of times I just use like a Greek pillar example. If, you just ask somebody, hey, what does, if I take two things and stack them on each other, is that going to hold a lot of load? Or if I offset them, now how much load can I put on there? So we just, we do a little Jenga, right? And you see if the two columns are stacked nicely on top of each other and everything is centered as well as possible, you can put a ton of load on there. As soon as that's offset by a little bit, now you have limits to your game. And that's really what it comes down to. And then, those limits are a longevity as well, not only in that moment, but, the future, because it's the efficiency. I also use this analogy of what they want is explosiveness, right? Like every coach wants an explosive and repeat explosive movements with their athletes in their sport. And so if you boil that down, like from a physics term, that's power. And power has two factors, right, to affect the formula of power. Power is work divided by time. So everyone's focused on this work part, which is fine because you need it, right? Like it's half and half. But there's this time component over here. And so time is a factor of efficiency. And so you need just as much efficiency in this equation, right? Because it's a 1-for-1. You need this efficiency piece, and that can be in the skill of the sport, right? Or it can be the skill of the movement, or it can be the decision-making technically, tactically that needs to happen. Like that, those are all the efficiency pieces you need to work on just as much as the load, application, and delivery. And I think that's, to the parents, it's like, hey, we're doing the work piece. What they need is the efficiency piece. And that's what they need to focus on. So can we get their joints in a better position? Can we get their alignment? Can we get their movement coordination in a better way? And that can be just as powerful, because if I just say, hey, we're not going to do any work, if I can just make you more efficient at what you're doing, you're more powerful. So, and everyone knows that from like just a basic working. So say if you have a parent that's a banker, is it like, hey, do you need to know more in your job, or do you just need to be more efficient at what you're doing? And they're like, oh, if I could be more efficient, God, if I could get 2 more hours back in a day, I'd be killing it. And, and that's it. It's the same. It's no different with the kids or the athletes.
I do think it's interesting because, again, I do think some of this higher level training stuff definitely has its place. And you have an athlete that's just an absolute stud, and they are extremely polished. To hear you say that some of the guys on your team are missing some of that, they're, and who knows what it could be, but it's interesting that we have kids that come in that start with us every week, and they're like, they've never done anything like this before. And you have them squat, and I swear to God, I'm glad we closed the door, because if we open it, they might get sucked out. Like, it's just like they're missing that much to just basic balance, hip mobility. Like it's interesting. And what does scare me a little bit is that we've had the gym for going on 13 years now. The kids that we're getting now are in less, have less than of a base than what they did 12 years ago. And I feel like it just, COVID didn't help anything. Schools have more, one-on-one Chromebook things, stuff like that, whatever list of things. So it's great to hear that, even at your level, like the basics are the basics, foundational movements are foundational movements. And if you do those well, great. If not, we gotta, we gotta revisit some things.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so many analogies to this, like even cooking, right? Like if all you have is one ingredient, you can only make so many meals. And the more movement capability you have, the more meals you can make, the more creative you can be. It just makes sense. Like to me, it's a 1 + 1 = 2 equation. And I get it from a parent's perspective, they're living that moment in time of like, oh, we need to do this, we need to do that. And they need to be, educated just like everybody else. And I think in speaking to those parents, I always like, figure out what they do, find an analogy that matches, and then repeat it back. And then they're like, oh, okay, I got it. Yeah. I'll sit over here while you work.
I think we've had kids come in before. We train these big volleyball groups and stuff. It's the first couple of weeks, you're still trying to learn everybody's name, stuff like that. All of a sudden you'll see somebody walking on their hands in the corner and be like, JC, what are you doing? I'm just messing around. You can walk on your hands like and you don't have shoulder issues. Oh, that's so weird. Oh no, I did gymnastics for X amount of time. And then you turn on the next day and she hits like a backhand flip flop. What is that? Back handspring into whatever it is. Just like, holy, you're doing this on turf. Like there's no mat here. Like let's but like the athleticism that comes with and owning the movement patterns that you need to own and now you're jumping and landing and swinging it like, no wonder you don't have shoulder issues. No wonder you don't have hip issues. You've practiced this, you've mastered it, you've done it over and over and over and over and over. Oddly enough, you're a healthy, athletic, human. And now we have a different, start point than what we might if we have somebody else who, doesn't have that background and whatnot. It just, yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting.
No, it's fascinating. And I think the more, I think that's what bodes to the trying to get your kids to play as many sports or do activities, right, as much as possible, because it allows for more variability for them and options for them to come up with better experiences. So yeah, I'm all about it. At the same time, like if they love playing soccer and that's all they want to do, then so be it as well. Then you just gotta, how do we sprinkle in the variability bits to get that stuff going? So at least we make sure we're giving them all the opportunities to be successful and injury free.
Yeah, absolutely. Coach, what do we miss? What do you wish I would have asked you that I didn't?
Whew. Oh man, I don't know. There's some good topics there. I always say it just depends what you want to know or what you want my opinion on. I don't know if I can tell you the answer, but I think it's good. I think probably to summarize it really starts with their love of activity. It's facilitating that love, like in things that you're doing, right? Like making it as enjoyable as possible, finding the value in all of it, and that you can do it with a smile on your face. And that ends up being motivating, right? Like for kids to come back each day. And, another friend of mine, Joshua Acock, he also enjoys working with the younger population. And his whole thing is like, kids are kind of inundated with homework and all the different things that they have to do, that you want the gym and the place that they're coming, voluntarily to be a happy, motivating environment. Like you don't want to stack more crap on them. You want to make it fun and enjoyable. And I think that's really, I think that's why from a parent standpoint, it shows, because the parent, if the kids are happy, the parents are happy. It's that like that simple. And so, if those two equations are working, like, you're doing a good job.
Yeah. I'm amazed with how much the coach affects what goes. My oldest just did football. We talked about this before we hit record. He's 12 years old. It's not a big team. So it's on a combined 6th, 7th, 8th grade team. So he's on the same field as 250-pound 8th graders who are linemen. He weighs 84 pounds. And I thought he was going to get destroyed. And he's like his mother. He's cautious. He looks before he leaps. My youngest one, the opposite, has never looked ever and is constantly leaping. But Reed had such a fun, rewarding experience with this group of coaches, and they absolutely poured into the kids, and it really was because of the coach. Like you made it fun. Again, when you're 12, it's different than when you're a junior in high school and you're taking multi, AP classes, and your teachers are loading you up with homework and all the things. Our juniors, they walk into the gym, sometimes they're just zombies. They're just exhausted. They're trying to work through this recruitment thing, a lot of them, and it's just recruitment. Oh my gosh, college recruiting is crazy. It's the most emotional thing. You're good, you're not that good. You're good, you're not that good. We want you, we don't want you. But man, I couldn't agree more with that. We tried, not that we might want to make it too fun, but like, this should be an enjoyable time when you're here. And
and you gotta, not that everybody gets a trophy, right? Because that's not the reality of life. Not everybody gets a trophy. Only one person gets the job. Like, you gotta put those in there as well, and you just gotta help the kids rationalize through the why to all this stuff and what they can do to give them the best opportunity for success. And I think, one cool thing you just mentioned there is that your kid being kind of undersized for playing football, and then those coaches being like, no, you can tackle that guy that's bigger than you. Like, you have that ability, and you just got to set yourself up a little differently, or whatever. You got to take maybe a little different tack to it, or you got to be a little more clever. You can't just muscle it. Like, all that stuff, to your point earlier about giving kids confidence that, hey, here's this surmountable thing or unsurmountable thing that this coach has just shown me how to tackle, and do. And I don't mean like physically tackle like your son, but like just being able to give them the strategies to show that, just because you're undersized or this thing is bigger than you, you can still go do it, and you can still take it on. And I think that there's a ton of life lessons in there that if they can, kind of keep those memories intact, that stuff's going to be gold throughout their life. It's like learning life through a sport or activity.
Well, it keeps him going too, because the season's over, but he's ready to go for next year. Like, just, excited for a little break.
I guess that's the other thing too that we didn't say is, like, it is clear as day. If you want to be successful at sports, the one thing that is guaranteed correlated with success is training. How much you're training. And so it's the consistency in which you're training. Not necessarily, I'm not saying, to parents to go out and train more per se. Like, you got to do it smart, because if you get injured, then you're not training, right? So, like, it's okay to do a little less one day if that means in the bigger picture you're gonna get further ahead, right? Like, that's where, we say, one day is not going to make you, but one day could break you if you're overloading something that, gets you to fall off the wagon. So, because it's that consistency of the training day in, day out, month in, month out, year in, year out, that gets you to the end, that gets your, 10,000 hours or whatever, to be successful. So if anything is sidelining that, like, parents yelling at you to not, because now you're not motivated to play or train, or, shitty coaching, or injuries from overloading stuff too much, right? Like, it's about consistency. It's the long game.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and go back to how we opened this, like, you have to love it. And if you love it, you'll do all that. And if you don't, you'll stop eventually.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, not a hard formula, really.
Darcy, I appreciate it so much. Thank you for your time. People want to reach out to you, see what you're doing, see all the things that are going on. Where?
Yeah, I'm not a big social media guy. I feel like I got too much stuff to do to post a bunch of stuff. I'm on Twitter. Yeah, I have LinkedIn, I have Twitter, Instagram. I don't really. It's more following my kids and what's going on in the world to try and stay pseudo relevant. But I don't really post much. I would say Twitter, LinkedIn are the two bigger ones. My email dnorman@ussoccer.org. I pride myself on getting back to everybody. I might not be quick, but I'll try and get back to you. And then, there's just so many resources out there. I think what you're doing, the various podcasts. I try and do those because I feel like these kind of conversations provide context that people need. Where 140 word, I don't know, it's up maybe to 240 thing on Twitter. There's just not enough context to really give it the depth it needs, to get points across. So those would probably be the bits, and otherwise I'm just focused on helping our team and trying to win games and get better.
There we go. We're excited because World Cup in the U.S.
Yeah. America has no idea what's coming. The people, when I say that, if they have been to Europe and been to soccer games in Europe or abroad, they'll probably chuckle at my comments because you just don't know what's coming. The world is going to show up here, and a ton of passionate fans for what's going to happen. And I think U.S. is set up really well from an infrastructure to deal with it. I think it's going to be extremely successful. And hopefully we're in the mix right to the end.
Coach, this is exciting. Awesome.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the time.
No, absolutely. Good luck to you guys. Let's get after it, and good luck with some lacrosse, and we'll be watching.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. Oh yeah, you can always follow my daughter Hannah.Norman is her Instagram. She needs as many followers as possible to up, because that's where they kind of make their money on sponsors. So if you're into snowboarding, want to see some good tricks, she posts fairly regularly. So you can follow her and help her sponsorship. It'll also help the bank of mom and dad.
There we go. So your 19-year-old's better at the social media thing than you are. Is that what you're
saying? Way better. Way better. Yeah.
There you go. Coach, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Listeners, thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next one. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for listening to another episode of Oak Performance Radio. Don't forget to check us out on the social at Oak Performance and online at www.oakstrength.com/Oak Performance. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.